Good afternoon and welcome to the 2 p.m. agenda of the House Consumer Protection and Commerce Committee meeting. Welcome to our two guests who are here and live in person, as well as many who are joining us virtually. Since we have this great option available to us of a hybrid, I did want to go over a few quick housekeeping measures to start us off that'll help to facilitate today's proceedings. If you are on Zoom and joining us virtually, we're glad to have you. If you can ensure that your name in the Zoom profile matches and comports with the name that you submitted testimony under, that helps our technicians better highlight and spotlight you. You can also ensure that you are muted until you're called upon and then unmute yourself, and then please feel free to testify. Also, if you are joining us in person, we now have a podium, so you can feel free to approach the podium when your name is called, and I will call in order of submission by governmental agency, organization, individual, and then do the same for late testimony. And as always, everybody's done a fantastic job of this, and I just ask for continued assistance here if everybody can make sure to show aloha in their testimony. I think that helps in the legislative process to ensure that irrespective of how we feel on the various issues, everyone's opinions are respected, as different as they may be. With that, we'll go ahead and get started on our agenda. First off, we have SB 3272 relating to transportation, and this requires the Department of Transportation to adopt rules to require tour aircraft operators to report details of each flight taken by the tour aircraft operation on a monthly basis. Before I call on the testifiers, I did forget to mention in the housekeeping notes that we do have a 2-minute time limit in consumer protection and commerce. So once the 2 minutes have elapsed, we'll ask you to kindly start to summarize your testimony. Moving back to SB 3272, we have Chair Larry Beret of the Pearl City Neighborhood Board in support, but not here. Next, we have Jack Harder Helicopters in opposition, Christopher Reimer. It looks like someone.
Yes, I'm here. I've got unmuted now.
Welcome. Thank you. Please go ahead, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think I can read the written testimony I submitted, but appreciate Chair Johansson and Vice Chair Kitagawa and the rest of the members of the committee. We've been a helicopter operator for a very long time here on the island of Kauai. We've done tours for over 50 years. This measure, as amended, would be very burdensome to us. It also risks the Department of Transportation Airports Division becoming further in violation of what we believe the grant assurance is, paragraph 22, and that they cannot unjustly discriminate between different types of aircraft operations. Air tours are the only type of operation that would be required to collect and report the data that is in this bill. We had, in a previous version of the bill, supported partially the bill because it established the Air Noise and Safety Task Force that we've participated in over the last few years. But unfortunately, that part of the measure or the part of the bill was removed last time it was at the Transportation Committee. We do urge you folks at the legislature to communicate with FAA airports at their Honolulu district office and also with Department of Transportation Airports Division if they're not going to provide testimony today about the effects that this bill could have on the airport system. And if anybody has any questions, I'm here to answer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reimer. Next, we have Michelle Matson with the Oahu Tour Helicopter Safety Noise and Interaction Group in support.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson. I'm Michelle Matson, representing the Oahu Tour Helicopter Safety and Noise Interaction Group, which has been closely monitoring these tour aircraft flights over our protected areas and our noise sensitive areas relentlessly. I hope you have had a chance to closely consider our testimony. This bill is only a first step of what is desperately needed. We strongly support this bill. We supported the previous version as well with the task force, as long as the task force would include community members, which it never did. It was only run by the tour industry, and 2 representatives from the co-chairs from airports. We would respectfully request that the effective date be changed to upon approval. And we would like to know if the written reports will be made publicly available monthly, and if these will be posted on the DOT website that we can subscribe to for current information. And so that we can compare our screenshots and our information with that information to know that it is correct. Or alternatively, posting it monthly on the Airports Division website as a separate category. Thank you very much for providing this hearing and for passing this out of your committee. We certainly welcome your hearing the bill and look forward to a successful outcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michelle. We also have Jill Pollen in support, David Laeja in support, Deborah Laeja in support. We have late testimony from the Department of Transportation in support. They are not here. Disappointing on a transportation bill. But members, please note they did provide written testimony in support of the intent of this bill. Just in case, so we make sure not to disenfranchise anyone inadvertently, I'll also call, even though they've not indicated that they would be present, to testify, Paradise Helicopters in opposition, John Varrell in support, Bruce Lum in support, Jody Green in support, Barbara Mayer in support, Kimiona Kane in support, Lucinda Piles in support, and Randall Roth in support. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 3272? Okay, seeing no further testifiers on the measure, then members, any questions? Representative Onishi.
For Mr. Christopher Remark?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, can you explain in your testimony about the possible effect? So I guess you alluded to something about the equity with all I guess aviation companies and not having the same requirement.
Yes, sir. The FAA grant assurances require in paragraph 22 that any recipient of the grant money that helps to greatly fund all of the airports in Hawaii as a grant recipient, that they treat all operators equally with, I guess the wording is exactly without unjust discrimination. And there have been many bills put forward to the state legislature that had intents that were good, bad, whatever, but they were not researched well. And when DOT airports and FAA airports and others got involved, they realized that there was an unjust discrimination occurring. If a helicopter company or an airplane company does not do tour operations, then they do not have to provide this reporting. They don't have to keep the data. None of the companies that fly right now collect all the data that would be required in this bill. There's really no way to exactly collect all the data because it requires precise information about where the aircraft are being flown. And then it also requires reporting saying why somebody didn't do something. And the granularity of that data would be almost impossible to get and extremely expensive and burdensome to collect on a monthly basis. and then submitting it to DOT would be another thing. And I forgot to mention in my earlier testimony that I don't think anybody from DOT airports has been asked if they have the manpower to collect and then disseminate this information, and what are they going to do with it once they get it? There has to be some kind of funding. Otherwise, it's an unfunded mandate. And I know that the Department of Transportation Airports Division, just like every business and every governmental agency, is really struggling with manpower right now.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Representative. Members, any additional questions? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to the next agenda item, SB 2679, relating to driver's licenses, and this would extend the renewal period from 2 years to 4 years for licenses of those who are 72 years of age or older, but younger than 80 years of age. On SB 2679, we have the Department of Health, Executive Office on Aging and Support. Not here. ARP Hawaii and Support. Not here. I'm not going to call, we have numerous individuals in support and providing comments, but indicating they would not be here on this measure. We do have late testimony from the Department of Transportation. Also not here on another transportation related measure. Just in case, is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2679? Okay, sorry, members, there is no one to ask questions to on this Kupuna Caucus measure. With that, then we'll move on. Thankfully, not to something that requires the Department of Transportation to be here. SB 3284 relating to information technology services, and this establishes a technology services consolidation working group, which shall develop a plan for the phased consolidation of all state executive branch information technology services and staff within 5 years, excluding those of the Department of Education, HHSC, UH, and OHA under the Office of Enterprise Technology Services. It requires the working group to recommend ways to attract high quality information technology professionals to the state, and it dissolves the working group a year ostensibly from passage. On 3284, do we have the Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs offering comments? Department of Budget and Finance offering comments? Not here as well. Office of Enterprise Technology Services and Support?
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We stand on our written testimony in support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Transform Hawaii Government and Support. Not here. Oh, I was wrong. Department of Transportation offering comments, but not here. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 3284? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions? If not, I have a quick question for Doug Murdoch, CIO. Yes.
Yes, I'm on.
Hi, thank you. So I appreciate your testimony in support of the intent. I guess what I wanted to ask is, given your testimony and what you feel like you've already identified and consolidated, do you feel like there are significant areas left for consolidation where feasible and practical that ETS hasn't already done this?
There are many, many things that could be further consolidated, such as cybersecurity across the state and networking within the departments and even major system modernization projects. So there is still a lot to do. I think this bill is a good way to look at it, where you have a planning time and then you have an execution time. It probably would take years to actually consolidate all the things that could be consolidated.
Okay, so there's still potential, essentially, for some good to be done here and efficiencies to be achieved.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much CIO Murdoch. Members, are there any additional questions on the measure?
Yeah, Chair.
Representative Onishi.
Mr. Murdoch,
Yes.
so with these departments that you have consolidated services, how are you guys handling equipment maintenance and user support?
Right now, that's done in the departments for the most part, except for those things that are centralized under ETS. So that would be one of the things we would consider consolidating is equipment purchasing and support and a central help desk for everybody.
So
And
do you have services on the neighbor islands?
We have one staff member on each neighbor island.
And that staff person basically provides support for your consolidated services, correct?
Yes, right. And they support the network in state buildings and other communications things that we have in the state buildings.
Okay, so does that person control any of the infrastructure on the west side of Hawaii Island?
They go whichever side they need to go.
Okay, and what is the response time for the services needed?
Well, fortunately, most things can be done remotely, with the central services we have. So it's not usually a long response time. Generally speaking, we can fix things online.
Well, it's been my experience working in the IT department for the county of Hawaii that we had to staff up significantly to help support the west side of the island, as well as other community services and satellite offices on Hawaii Island. And I'm just wondering these challenges of trying to provide timely support to end users. I don't know how you do that from a limited central office. So that would be my concern in terms of this concept. I can see doing application centralization or systems across the entire state, such as Microsoft 365, etc. But the end user support generally is where the problems occur in terms of timeliness of service. So I hope if this working group moves forward, that's going to be taken into consideration. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you,
you.
Representative Onishi.
Valuable input. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, any additional questions on SB 3284? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, SB 449, relating to public safety. This would require property owners of residential real property to disclose as part of the mandatory seller disclosures in real estate transactions whether the installed smoke alarm is in accordance with existing building or residential codes based on information provided by the State Fire Council. It requires the State Fire Council to create and maintain an informational guide on approved smoke alarms that are in accordance with the existing building or residential codes and post the guide on specified websites. For SB 449, we have the Hawaii State Fire Council in support. Hawaii State Fire Council. Oh, hi, Gary.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Gary Lump, representing the State Fire Council. We stand on our written testimony that was submitted in support of this measure.
Thank you very much, Gary. We also have the Hawaii Realtors Association in
Hello.
support. Sorry, in opposition.
So
Ken, hold on for 1 second. Can you mute the other person? Okay, I think we got it taken care of. Sorry about that, Ken. Please proceed.
Okay, hi, Hawaii Realtors, we support the homeowners installing smoke alarm, but just like to make sure there's no confusion and provide clarity to sellers in the real estate transaction of what's required. So on page 2, line 12, we recommend the reference there to the purchase contract, where it says on the real estate purchase contract. We want to note that it's a technical thing, but the seller's real property disclosure statement is on a separate form from the purchase contract. So in other words, technically, it's not on the real estate purchase contract. So removing the reference to the purchase contract will eliminate the confusion. It's a technical thing. The other thing we recommend is that, sometimes there's a confusion between what is a smoke alarm and a smoke detector. So we'd recommend that there be added a definition to the term smoke alarm, and we suggested some language. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ken. We also have late testimony and support from the Maui Fire Department and the Honolulu Fire Department, but neither of them are present. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 449? Okay, seeing no further testifiers then, members, any questions on the measure? Okay, seeing no questions, then we will move on to our next agenda item. SB 2877 relating to the residential landlord tenant code, and this allows a landlord or the landlord's agent to charge an application screening fee to cover the costs of obtaining a tenant report or credit report for a potential tenant. It requires the landlords to refund any used amount of the application screening fee and upon request provide a receipt for payment of the application screening fee. For SB 2877, we have the Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness in support.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members. Scott Morishige, Governor's Coordinator on Homelessness and Chair of the Hawaii Interagency Council on Homelessness. I'll start my written testimony supporting the intent and offering comments. Just note that I prefer the language in the original SD1, which includes stronger consumer protections and, among other things, requires that any unused portion of the application fee be returned to the tenant within 30 days. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much, Scott. We also have Steve Levins with the Office of Consumer Protection, BCCA, offering comment.
Good afternoon. I'm Steve Levins from the Office of Consumer Protection. The current version of this bill really achieves very little in the realm of consumer protection. The consumer protections sought by the original version of the bill really have been eliminated, and that is a cap on the application fee, and probably even more important, the bill addressed the abuses in which certain unscrupulous landlords or brokers were asking multiple family members to submit application fees with really no intention of even renting the property to them. So because of this, we would ask that the original provisions of this bill, which actually had very robust consumer protections, be reinstated. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Steve. We also have Department of Human Services and support here. St. Michael the Archangel Church in support here. Catholic Charities Hawaii with comments.
Chair Johansson and Vice Chair Kitagawa. I'm Betty Lou Larson with Catholic Charities Hawaii. We also strongly supported the earlier versions of this bill, but feel that the many deletions in the current House Draft 1 really make it ineffective. We feel that this is really a problem, not only for lower income people, but even Ellis families, Ellis households who are seeking affordable housing. There are many barriers just because of the tight market. But if you add on unregulated fees and unregulated how many fees can be charged per family, this becomes a severe financial burden, not only impacting on the discouragement of the people, but even more importantly on what they can save for the deposit and first month's rent if they have to pay these fees just to supposedly get in the foot in the door, but may not even be considered. We're not opposed to a fee if it's at the time they're actually being screened, and if there's a reasonable fee so that it would cover. And if it's a reasonable fee, there shouldn't be a return of the deposit because the person should know what does it take for a credit check, etc. So, but the lack of timeframes is also a concern because it removes accountability from the landlord. When should they return a fee? A year later, 6 months later? You know, it just becomes very ineffective, we feel, with these deletions that have been made. So we ask you to reinsert the language that provide that stronger protection and stronger ability of so many people who are desperate for housing be able to actually access the available housing. Thank you very much today for listening to this bill.
Thank you very much, Betty Lou. We also have Nikos Leverins with the Hawaii Health and Harm Reduction Center offering comments, but is not here. Members, that's the extent of our proffered testimony on SB 2877. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2877? I'm sorry, I should look at you. Okay, it seems as though there are no further testifiers on the measure. Members, any questions on SB 2877? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to our next agenda item. We're leaving housing and heading toward agriculture with SB 2798 relating to veterinary medicine. This authorizes the Hawaii Board of Veterinary Medicine to grant temporary courtesy and relief permits for out-of-state veterinarians and permits licensed veterinarians to practice veterinary medicine, veterinarian telemedicine. It also allows for international veterinary school graduates to qualify for the licensure examination. Members, please note we saw a substantially similar bill and passed it out, which was HB 1598 earlier this session. On SB 2798, we have the Department of Agriculture in support.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson. Morrisata on behalf of the department. The department will stand on its written testimony in support and appreciates the change implementing an earlier date than the previous version. Thank you. We're available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have the Hawaii Board of Veterinary Medicine.
Good afternoon, Chair Johansson and members of the committee. My name is Carrie Shahan with the Hawaii Board of Veterinary Medicine. The board stands on its written testimony in support of the intent of the bill, requesting a few amendments. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this morning.
Thank you very much, Carrie. We also have the Hawaiian Humane Society in support.
Thank you very much, Chair Johansson, Vice Chair Kitagawa, committee members. In respect for the fact that the committee has heard this bill before, I will keep my comments brief. You have our testimony. Stephanie Kendrick, Hawaiian Humane Society. You have our testimony in enthusiastic support of this measure. I just want to emphasize the urgency of this matter. This really does restore a vital pipeline of service that has huge impacts for our animals, as well as our veterinary community, our pet owners, and our animal welfare community. So we have suggested amendments permitting the bulk of the bill to take effect upon approval, and understanding DCCA's concerns about its computer system, requesting that the 2 new permits take effect a year following. And I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Stephanie. Nice to see you. We also have, let's see, indicating they would be present, the Hawaii Veterinary Medical Association, Bob Toyofuku.
Mr. Chairman and members, Bob Toyofuku testifying for HVMA. I'm really actually substituting for Joe Yoshishiro, who usually testifies and submitted the written testimony. All of the reasons for this bill, which is the shortage of veterinarians, and to clarify telemedicine for vets, is in the written testimony. The only request at this point is to see if the effective date could be upon approval, except for the courtesy permits and relief permits, where the DCCA and the board, I think, needs a little more time to work that out. So we're suggesting maybe the middle of next year, July 2023 for that effective date on those two sections. But thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bob, and also nice to see you. Members, please note that we have numerous other testimonies by organizations and individuals provided in support on this measure. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on SB 2798? Okay, seeing no further testifiers, members, any questions on the measure? Okay, seeing no questions, then we'll move on to our next agenda item, SB 2986, relating to hemp. And this makes various changes to the industrial hemp pilot program statutes that essentially reduce or eliminate what are deemed to be overly burdensome regulatory barriers by the introducers. It does so on many levels. First off, on SB 2986, we have the Department of the Attorney General in opposition.
Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Pu'u. I'm a Deputy Attorney General with the Criminal Justice Division. We are the statewide prosecutors present for the department testifying in opposition to this bill. Hemp flower, seeds, and leaves are readily indistinguishable from illegal Schedule I marijuana. This inability to distinguish also raises concerns for consumers regarding the proposal in this bill to permit the sale of biomass when that term remains essentially undefined. In short, this bill seeks to essentially remove the state's ability to regulate hemp, which would directly hinder law enforcement's ability to police the production, transport, and distribution of illegal marijuana within the state of Hawaii. I'm available for questions.
Thank you very much, Michelle. We also have the Department of the Attorney General offering the Department of Agriculture offering comment.
Good afternoon, Chair, committee members. The department will stand on its written testimony, offering comments and are available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Morris. Let's see. We have the Hawaii Farmers Union United in support. Hunter Heivelin. Not here.
I'm here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Hunter.
Sorry. Aloha, Hunter Heflin with Hawaii Farmers Union United. We stand on our written testimony in strong support of this bill and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here, Hunter. We also have South Maui Gardens, James Tallman in support.
Hi, thank you, Chair, committee members. We are in strong support of this bill. My name is James Tallman from South Maui Gardens. Our background is nursery work for the last 30 years. We've been part of the pilot program, part of the hemp pilot program since close to the beginning. We've been involved for close to 3 years now. Since the beginning, the program has been very difficult to work in. Most farms are going out of business. There's basically no hemp industry in Hawaii. Currently, the over-regulation of hemp is causing this industry to fail. Our business is struggling. We're getting ready to lay off half of our workforce, and it's mainly due to not being able to sell our product in the state of Hawaii. Mainland companies currently control the Hawaii market when it comes to hemp. Currently there's no way for us to sell our product in Hawaii. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tallman. We also have the Hawaii Hemp Farmers Association, Ray Maki, in support.
Yeah, aloha, Chair. This is Gail Byrne-Baber. I'm Vice President. Ray couldn't make it. Is it okay if I speak on his behalf?
Sure, please go ahead, Gail.
Well, thank you so much. And this is the second hearing Ray wasn't able to make because, like many farmers, he's having to work another job, hemp farmers in particular. And I would say this bill is critical at this point. I just returned from a conference on the mainland bunch of farmers who eat airfare together for me to go there and make sure we're on point with what we're trying to do. And I have to tell you, I spoke with regulators from most of the other states, and they're just kind of shocked at the state of Hawaii regulations still. Oh, pardon me. I thought I'd turn that off. So I just want to let you know that what we're asking for here is completely reasonable. I want to speak to the processing exemption quickly, but also I want to address the AG's concerns with regard to not being able to identify or distinguish between marijuana and hemp. Currently, what is used to distinguish if we move hemp or biomass around in the state is a movement report, which is based on a USDA license and laboratory report. And most of us put in a letter to law enforcement and contact information. There's been no issue whatsoever yet in 4 years. And in most states, there's been no issue. Less than like 1% of all the hemp farmers have there been an issue nationwide with this problem with supposedly not being able to distinguish between marijuana and hemp. So the processes that we've proposed in SB 2986 are aligned with other states and will absolutely help and reduce some of the burdensome regulation we're facing. I want to underscore that the consumer health and safety is also really protected with this bill and already, because first of all, we have to test our crops, make sure they're compliant. And second of all hemp and CBD products in this state are supposed to be tested post-processing before they hit the shelf. And all of us farmers already do that. That's the most important thing. And we're asking for an on-farm small exemption, small batch processing exemption to continue what we've been doing for 4 years. There's been no incident whatsoever. And I'll tell you, without this exemption, you're going to lose the remaining few farmers that are here, except for maybe the ones that are only exporting flour. But as you just heard from James, those folks are likely to go out of business too. So what we're asking for is not minor. We understand that the Department of Health is concerned about potentially this exemption, potentially opening a can of worms. Maybe other sectors or industries might want exemptions from certain rules. And I have to tell you that this exemption does not open a can of worms, because the conditions around the Hawaii hemp farmers not able to comply with the registry are absolutely unique to Hawaii hemp industry and don't apply to other sectors. And we sent several emails this morning outlining that. I can certainly go over that now or answer questions. Also,
if you can start to maybe summarize here, and I'll give you a second bite at the apple since you also provided testimony.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. The context is important. I'll wrap it up just by saying 98% of the hemp CBD products on the shelf right now sold to Hawaii residents online or in stores use imported oil or CBD from China or other states. And the least expensive source is China. None of those folks are meeting processing requirements by DOH. Not to say that they shouldn't, but it's putting us up against an unfair standard when consumer safety and health is protected by the final product testing. We have offered compromise language that I think is very reasonable in terms of phasing in a registry for small batch and also a small notice on labeling so there's transparency to the consumer that this particular hemp oil that's processed under a small batch exemption will be noted on that label. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And also, Gail, since you submitted individual testimony on behalf of the Hawaii Hemp Center, if there's something else you'd like to say, you can feel free.
Yeah, I guess I would say that the states that have the most viable and successful hemp programs establish rules to support agriculture, not rules to avoid at all costs the unlikely intervention of the federal government, the USDA, or the FDA. Hawaii went the other way. We were so conservative in our rules, we hamstrung our farmers and the industry, putting a number out of business. And the fact is the feds have not intervened in any states whatsoever. And the places where a couple of letters were sent in California actually had to do more with some interesting politics around big pharma. What we're asking for is aligned with and conforms with what other states are doing. And I'm telling you right now, I'll be out of business and almost every other hemp farmer will be out of business if the bill doesn't get passed intact with a couple of compromises we just offered. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Gail. We also have Peter Fay in opposition. Peter is not here. Hawaii Sustainable Farms, Robert Bentz, in support.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair. Sorry, I have a bad internet connection, but I'm in strong support of the bill and I stand on my written testimony. I am a lifelong farmer from Kula, and I'm very passionate about growing hemp. I bought hemp from Costco today. The look-alike product problem with hemp really keeping all, like, I just echo everything Gail said completely. It keeps all the Hawaii farmers from being able to compete. And there's that 2015, I think it's Title 11 Act, pretty much the Right to Farm Act. And having this burdensome, it's like a double regulation, but there's a response from the USDA. You know what to do. You go get your fingerprints, you follow their software. The state program's not able to administer it. So the best way to go is to follow the federal rules, because there's a lot of regulation that just goes into the federal rules. So just like what Gail said, if Hawaii was trying to support farmers, like they always say, it's important to support farmers. It's important to pass this bill at model.
Thank you very much, Robert. We appreciate it. We also have Clarence Baber, I guess also with the Hawaii Hemp Farmers Association in support. Here, okay. Certificates. Let's see, we have late testimony from the Department of Health offering comments.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members. My name is Greg Edwards with Department of Health, Food and Drug Branch. The department stands on our written testimony offering comments. I will be available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Greg. We also have we already did the members, please note we also have numerous individual testimonies in support, some offering comments, some in opposition on this measure, both proffered on time and late. Is there anyone else who I haven't called on SB 2986 who would like to testify on the measure? Okay, seeing no further testifiers on SB 2986, members, any questions on the measure? Okay, seeing no questions on SB 2986, then we'll move on to our last agenda item, SB 2382, relating to cabaret licenses. And this prohibits the issuance of a cabaret liquor license to premises located within an apartment mixed-use sub-precinct within a special improvement or special district in which the economy is primarily based on tourism. On SB 2382, we have numerous late testimonies from individuals in support, none of them indicating they'll be present, but since that's all we have, I'll call them just in case. Richard Schofield, Denise Wabert, Kim Jorgensen, Pam Walker, Irene Klupfer, Kiave Bray, Mark Travis, B.A. McClintock, Midori Trent, Mark Yakubovich, and Peter Thonen. Anyone here wishing to testify virtually or in person on SB 2382 relating to cabaret licenses? Such a fascinating topic, and no one's here to testify. Okay, seeing no further testifiers on SB 2382, unfortunately, members, there's no one to ask questions of on this measure. With that, then we'll go ahead and recess for decision making. Recess. reconvening our 2 p.m. agenda for decision-making purposes. First off, on SB 3272 SD2 HD1 relating to transportation, with the prior concurrence of the transportation chair. Thank you, Chair Aquino. I'd like to keep this measure moving with some amendments that include inserting a effective date of January 1, 2050 to encourage additional discussion, as well as technical non-substantive amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, any comments on the recommendation to pass with amendment? Or questions? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3272 SD2 HD1 with amendments. Chair and Vice Chair vote aye. Representative Aquino. Aye. Representative Har is excused. Representative Hashem is excused. Representative Kong is excused. Representative Mizuno. Aye. Representative Morikawa. Aye. Representative Onishi.
Aye.
Representative Tarnas.
Aye.
Representative Matsumoto. Aye. Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, and thank you, members. Next on SB 2679 SD2 HD1 relating to driver's licenses. The recommendation here, again with the prior concurrence of the transportation chair, is also just to make technical non-substantive amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. It's already got a defective date. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2679 SD2 HD1 with amendments, noting the excused absences of Representatives Har, Hashem, and Kong, who will be noted excused for the rest of today's agenda. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, members, on SB 3284 SD2 HD1 relating to information technology services. I think this is a great discussion to continue having. I am a little bit concerned, I must confess, about the de facto sort of assumption that everything should be consolidated. So with the members' indulgence, I want to make several amendments. Well, one primary amendment, which is a caveat wherever it's, phased consolidation of all state executive branches, and it implies all. I do want to put on a clarifier, we're determined practicable and feasible by this working group, so that the bill does not assume everything will be consolidated in IT space. I also like to note in the committee report that it's actually this committee's expectation that there will likely be some presence needed within the respective departments, whether that's for actual assistance, as Representative Onishi had teased out, sort of as a help desk, or for other functions. Willing, I think, to continue to keep having this discussion, but I do want to ensure that it's clear to the departments that if this bill keeps moving, it doesn't assume the final work product of the working group, that everything ends up being consolidated. I'm just not sure how practical and feasible that is. So that'll be noted in the committee report. I also want to note that I think this bill has quite a ways to go if it's going to cross the finish line. It's already got a defective date. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 3284 SD2 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, members, on SB 449 relating to public safety. This SB 449 HD1 relating to public safety, with the prior concurrence of the housing chair. I do want to take the State Fire Council's amendments to add to their responsibilities. So this would be a conforming amendment, just so that it's clear in multiple chapters that references what the State Fire Council does, that this is a responsibility of theirs, as this bill creates that new responsibility. I'd also like to take the Hawaii Association of Realtors amendments, the two of them, which is deleting the language regarding purchasing contract, as well as taking them up on their definition of a smoke alarm. And I'd like to make technical and non-substantive amendments for clarity, consistency, and style. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 449 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, on SB 2877 SD1 HD1 relating to the residential landlord tenant code. The recommendation here, as it's already got a defective date, is to pass this measure as is. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation?
Sure.
Yes, Representative Onishi.
Yeah, reading the testimony of all the testifiers for this bill, for this hearing, they all concerned with the reduction in consumer protection. And they all preferred SD1 version of the bill and not the HD1. And so with that, in mind, I am going to be voting with reservations on this bill. I'd actually like to vote no, but I think it's a necessary bill. And hopefully it'll get consumer protections to get placed back into the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Representative Onishi. Members, any additional comments or questions? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2877 SD1 HD1 as is, noting the reservations of Representative Onishi. Are there any additional reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next, members on SB 2798 SD1 HD1 relating to veterinary medicine. With the prior concurrence of the Agriculture Chair, I'd like to make several amendments to this measure. I would like to take the Board of Veterinary Medicine's requested amendments on pages 6, 9, and 13 that they reference in their testimony. I would also like to take the Hawaiian Humane Society's amendments, but instead of upon approval, just because I want to be sure that we have one last look at it. I do want that language that I think will help DCCA, but I will be inserting a effective date of January 1, 2050, just to ensure that we have one last look at this as this goes to conference and gets very close, likely to passage. Though, as well as technical and non-substantive amendments. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay. Seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2798 SD1 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Next, members, on SB 2986 SD1 HD1 relating to hemp. On this, I think there are many merits to the exploration, the continued exploration of how to provide relief and assistance to our hemp farmers. I deliberately do want to set up some contrast with some of the different iterations of the legislation so that we can clarify some of the most germane ways to achieve that kind of help for our hemp farmers. So the recommendation is going to be to pass with amendments, including taking all of the Attorney General's proposed amendments in their testimony and inserting a effective date of January 1, 2050. I do want to know, members, that I think we want to continue to extend the pilot. So, some iteration of this bill, if it passes, would need to correct that defective date. But I do want to ensure that we have to keep discussing this bill because I think it's got a lot of great potential, but it has many inherent issues as fleshed out by our testifiers. I do also want to note to many of our amazing advocates and farmers who have testified today that I think what would be helpful as this measure continues to move is to really hone in and zero in and prioritize which of the regulatory burdens are most burdensome and sort of perhaps focus this bill a little bit more on that so that instead of tackling so many of the regulatory issues and then engendering a lot of different opposition, that we can really hone the scope of this bill and potentially get that needed relief to the farmers. As well as making technical and non-substantive amendments. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2986 SD1 HD1 with amendments. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. And lastly, on SB 2382 SD1 HD1, the recommendation is to pass this measure as is. Members, any comments or questions on the recommendation? Okay, seeing none, then Vice Chair for the vote, please.
The recommendation of the chair is to pass SB 2382 SD1 HD1 as is. Are there any reservations? Any noes? Chair, your recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you, members. And with that, this committee meeting is adjourned.